Hi everyone, it's Dr. Ramani. Welcome back to this YouTube channel on narcissism, narcissistic relationships, and healing from these relationships. And one of the things that's really important to understand anytime we're talking about narcissistic relationships is shame. So let's talk about the double shame that happens to people who get into narcissistic relationships. So you think one shame is bad enough. A double scoop? Probably not great. Now, shame is the prevailing climate of a narcissistic relationship. The narcissistic person is sort of caught in a chronic state of shame. Their vulnerability brings up shame. Their shame leads them to lash out at other people. They are unable to regulate their sense of shame. So shame is just sort of their groove. But they have not cornered the market on shame in the narcissistic relationship. The other person in the narcissistic relationship is also riddled with shame, and it is often doubled because it is created in two different ways for survivors of narcissistic relationship. First, there are the numerous ways that you feel shame because of the relationship. The narcissistic person will literally just project their shame onto you, and in order for the relationship to work, it sort of requires you to internalize their shame and make it your own. People in narcissistic relationships may also feel a sense of shame for being in a relationship that is so dysfunctional and may even try to hide the relationship, not talk about it, or talk about it in a way that isn't true just to dodge the shame. Then there is the shame that the relationship may bring up for you because other people in your world are being hurt by the narcissistic person. This may be strangers that you encounter that the narcissistic person yells at, or your children if you're co-parenting with them, or your family members, just anyone you care about. You watch them be treated badly by the narcissistic person. You may not feel that there's much you can do about it, and you may also have a sense of shame that this person is even a part of your life. And then there is the exposure to having all of you shamed. Your needs, your aspirations, your identity. You're shamed for having a want or a need, and the narcissistic person will often communicate that through their resentment of your needs, and you then carry that shame for feeling bad or guilty for wanting or needing, and being indoctrinated into believing that you are shameful for actually having those needs or wants. But that, sadly, is not the end of the shame street in these relationships. Then there is the shaming that happens from the world at large. Narcissistic behavior and what happens in narcissistic relationships. It's still not fully understood by most people. So if you're going through a narcissistic relationship, you can often feel quite alone, because people really often don't really get it. Like I said, if you speak badly about the relationship or the narcissistic person, you may be shamed by other people for talking badly about a family member or a spouse or partner, or for sharing your family problems publicly, or speaking badly about a colleague. If you do decide to take action in the relationship, you may be shamed for considering divorce or estrangement from your family. If you keep struggling with the relationship, you may be shamed for not being able to get over it, for not being able to make it work, or perhaps for having unrealistic expectations. And this 1-2 shame punch can mean that it is all but impossible to make sense of these relationships, to heal from them, and to get past them. Shame is a prison, an internalization of the sense that there is something wrong or damaged about you, that you are not good enough, and that this is something that is judged by the world. The internalized shame that survivors of these relationships experience is bad enough. But when the world is echoing that sentiment, it can feel impossible to find a way out of it. Listen, as a therapist who has worked with hundreds of folks experiencing narcissistic abuse, the shame, as I observe it happening for them, comes out in many ways. I've seen folks become socially isolated, experiencing social anxiety, holding back on their aspirations, keeping their needs silenced, feeling numb, feeling sad, being anxious. And what I've also observed is when these experiences, that when they talk about the experiences in their narcissistic relationship are taken out in the world, when a person who has survived narcissistic abuse may finally find the strength and courage to talk about it with other people, there may actually be an experience of being doubted or questioned, or being told like, oh, it's not really abusive, nobody hit you, or that maybe they're being harsh for saying someone's narcissistic. And it almost calcifies those patterns and leads to more isolation and more holding back. The entire narcissistic relationship is a study in shame. And the narcissistic person's shame is projected onto the world. Now, sadly, narcissistic shame, I really believe this is true, has rewritten, or written, I should say, not even rewritten, written the course of human history. Narcissistic world leaders, with their insecure and fragile egos, once their shame reaches a boiling point, launch wars and political division and make choices that destroy the most vulnerable people in a society. That's the big view. But whether it's your close relationship or the world at large, the unchecked shame of narcissistic people may actually result in a more harmful experience of shame for the people in these relationships. And what really makes it, again, sort of a double hit, double jeopardy of shame, as it were, is that not only is there the shame that happens within the relationship, but the ongoing shaming that happens from the many people out there who do not understand what the landscape of a narcissistic relationship looks like. Thanks again.